It'll change over.
Oh, okay. I thought it was just defying me by
It just had,
New Year.
it had to do that.
How you doing? Good. How are you doing? Pretty good. Yeah. How about you? Yeah. Where's yours? Yeah, I do too.
I'm more green on this.
Why does it take a day and a half for this to come up?
Got the twirling that guy. Yeah, I think it's not working here. That's still in
Oh, preparing windows. Oh, yeah. That can be a little bit more. I think we can, it's 5:01.
Yeah, you can go ahead and start with the protocol that it'll come up.
See that you watch.
Yeah, it will. Yeah.
All right, good evening. This is a special meeting of the Kent School District Board held in public, comply with the Open Public Meetings Act. The purpose of this meeting is a policy work session with Ms. Pam Hawley. Directors Margell and Hamada will be attending the meeting via Zoom. I'm going to go ahead and call roll call. Director Bento,
I'm present.
Director Farah,
Present.
and I'm Tim Clark, and I'm present. All right, Superintendent Vela, would you like to start with introductions?
Thank you, President Clark. And first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody back for the new year, and great to have everyone back.
Yes.
Without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce Ms. Pam Hawley, our policy coordinator, who will get us started this evening. Pam.
Just want to see if they're. Director Margell, is that you that's logged into the Zoom?
Yes, it's me.
Great.
Thank you. Let the record show for roll call that we have Director Margell in attendance as well.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Clark, members of the board, Superintendent Vela, Ms. Santello. Tonight, we're going to talk about 6 policies, and 5 of them are essential, 1 is encouraged. Just as a reminder about classification, essential is required by state or federal law, or a specific program requires a policy in order to receive special funding. Again, just as a refresher, the board's charge is the what, staff's is the how in procedure. Our first policy we're going to look at tonight is 2024. It's online learning. This is first reading. And let me pull up the Word version. Good deal, Bill? Looks like maybe Joel's gone. I minimize the screen. 2024 has very few changes to it, although it looks like a lot here because of the changes in the RCW legal references that were made. But really, it was a matter of semantics. They changed online courses, programs to read online learning courses, grade level coursework. Also, cross-reference of 2020 course design, selection, and adoption of instructional materials was added. Other than that, very few changes on here. And you can see what was changed. I see President Hamada has joined. I'm sorry, Legislative Representative Hamada.
Yes.
Any questions?
I have a question. The part that's crossed out in blue about online learning programs, courses, materials, et cetera, will be established using policy 2020 curriculum development and adoption of instructional materials. Can I ask why that was? Because most of our programs that we do have to go through that curriculum adoption committee. Is it, and I noticed that it was added a cross-reference, but I was just curious why that part was crossed out.
That was actually revised by WASDA. They took that out themselves. Our staff actually added the cross-reference back in.
Got it. Because to me, it makes it sound like that, oh, well, if you do an online program, it doesn't have to go through a materials adoption, is what it looks like, but I know that's not what we do in practice, but that's what it looks like on this, so I'm just curious about that.
I believe that was the only change, and again, our staff added it back in to make sure the cross-reference was in there, that was noted.
And you're right, Director Bennett, we wanted to make sure that that was known, and we got it back in there, so.
Okay. And that's how, we're doing it as the cross-reference though, right? Okay,
Right.
got it.
Any other questions?
Ms. Howley, I'm curious, this is the one I think I made a note on. This is the change about certain credentials are accepted and all that, and I think I made a note on mine.
I think that's on the students experiencing homeless, that you ask about a half credit on that. Was that the one?
Yeah, excuse me. You're on 2024, and that is the
Online learning, yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm
That's
ahead of
okay.
myself.
Anybody else?
Now, I was just looking at the last crossed out section. There's payment of course fees and other costs.
I think that's on the students experiencing homeless as well. And we'll get to that shortly, our next policy.
Yeah, I thought that was 2024.
Just as a
It is
point of
on there.
reference, this
It is on
is,
there. It is
2024.
on there, yeah.
we're
Yeah.
looking at,
With 2024. Mm-hmm. Is it because why am I seeing that part?
I don't
Not
see
on it.
that. Oh, wait, you're looking at the bottom.
It does talk about payment of
Oh, I
course
have to look at
fees,
the bottom one, yeah.
granting credit.
I see. Yeah. Oh, I see it.
That wasn't touched.
Yeah.
So because Director Bennett brought up the issue on, it's just the way we do it, does that have to be in the policy? Or the question he had, I'm a little confused by it. That is just the accepted way it's done, but it's not clarified in this? Is that what I heard you say, Director Bennett?
No, I was just curious why it was crossed out, because it makes it sound like it doesn't have to go through any instructional materials adoption. I was just curious why it was crossed out.
And again, the answer was, I'm sorry, I've got.
WASDA actually took it out of their model policy. We took it out, and they also took out the cross-reference, but our staff added it back in to make sure it was referenced in there.
So if I'm correct, then the cross-reference, make sure that what Director Bennett was saying, that was crossed out is really cross-referenced, so we don't have to worry about it.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, it's in
Because we're cross-referencing that as part of our policy, that we would be using that.
Okay.
For whatever reason, my folder has the one that is crossed off on 2024, but when I look at the PDF files, it has all that not crossed off, and it's corrected in that way. Weird.
This is correct with the changes showing.
Right. On my PDF file, it has exactly like that.
Okay, terrific.
Ms. Holly, I don't want to be create a problem, but is there any way we could enhance that a little bit on those so I can see?
Oh,
her,
to make it bigger? Sure,
Yeah, just zoom it in.
sure.
just a little?
Thank
Does
you.
that help?
That helps a lot.
Yes.
Okay, great.
So for the rest of the board, what you're seeing on the screen is the actual Word document
Right.
that if changes were made, it's just for, as we had the other ones, you will not see them on your screen, you will see them here.
Right.
So if you want to all reference the screen.
Oh, okay,
Might
so-
be the best.
Okay.
So that if there was a change, or if you're referencing like Director Benham, we're talking about the same
Okay.
thing, so.
Right, and that's because of OPMA. Everybody has their own individual file, but we'll make the mass corrections or changes here on this one for everyone to see.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Helly.
Director Margell, anything?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. I know you were off for a minute, and I apologize for that.
No, I just switched devices.
Okay.
Thank you.
We good to move on? We have a consensus on this, that this is good to move forward?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Fine with me, yes.
Next policy is 3115, students experiencing homelessness, enrollment rights and services. This is a first reading. Just some background on this. The provisions for enrolling students experiencing homelessness include that districts must ensure the prompt transfer of student records between the previous and the enrolling school. They must eliminate enrollment delays caused by schools' requirements, such as student health records, birth certificates. And they must develop, review, and revise laws, policies, and practices that pose barriers for student enrollment and retention, including those caused by fees, fines, and absences. And I think that's what Director Hamada was referencing, and Director Farah. Senate Bill 5325 notes that each K through 12 public school in Washington must establish a building point of contact regardless of the number of unaccompanied youth. It used to be if we had 10 or more. Now each building is required to have a point of contact. That person is appointed by the principal, and our McKinney-Veno liaison, Lori Medeo, is the person in charge of training that building point of contact.
And while you're on that, Ms. Holly, I had a question on there that I put on there. Do we already have all those names at every school that's a contact? And do we reference those on our website, or is that in the process of being done? So everybody could access that?
The website references our McKinney-Veno liaison, and she would get in contact with the person at the building who's been appointed. The reason there's staff changes and different people are appointed to this position at different times. So we don't publish at this point in time the names, but we have the person that can get the names of the contact at the building. And Lori takes calls all throughout the summer. She's a 12-month employee where all the elementaries are closed at certain points during the school year. And she is able to help people get services or pointed in the direction they need.
If I
That
can,
makes sense. So, yeah, that makes sense. The other question I had, or no, comment I had is, because I was on the 9 o'clock meeting for Human Services, is the terminology is now unhoused houseless, or what's the other one that I put on there? That it's considered it not proper heading to say homelessness anymore.
We're just following the WASDA model policy with their title at this point, and if they update it, we'll definitely update ours as well. I know I've seen unhoused and other words, but at this point, and in fact, we've updated ours to say, instead of, as a respectful term, homeless students, we're saying students experiencing homelessness.
That was going to be my question too, about what OSPI and what WASDA does, but you answered that. But it feels like a lot of service providers don't use homeless students, but I do appreciate in the actual document, we do people first language, where we said students experiencing homelessness, which I'm great with, but I'm kind of curious what our service providers say. And I know it's part of doing the work is wordsmithing, but I'm just curious what, if OSPI and WASDA are using homeless students, that's not current or accurate language, and so maybe we need to be kind of ahead of the curve on that.
And that is why we changed to students experiencing homelessness instead of homeless students.
No, it's a really good point, Director Beno. Students experiencing homelessness really have, it's a different definition for the different stages they may be in. They may be residing with a friend or someone. They may be what the term that you may have heard in the past, couch surfing, or a number of different things that it could be. So students experiencing homelessness is broad enough for our liaison to work with contacts to be able to qualify them based on the information that they're getting during the interview. So yeah, it's a good use of terms.
Thank you.
And
Right, but they are saying at the social services, human service meetings, that it is offensive to use the word homelessness. And now, understand that you're saying this is coming from WASD or whatever, but I see no reason why we can't be ahead of the curve, just like with our she, her, and him and all those, things. I'm not sure. Are you saying because it's federal guidelines that we can't do that? That the terminology has to be in sync with the feds or the state? That we can't write our own terminology?
So I'd like to bring up our Executive Director of Student and Family Support Services. Ms. Bullock, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, Director Hamada, that you're correct in that it's really the federal language that hasn't kept up. And so to be consistent with that federal language, so I think we're in kind of a between place. We can certainly work with our contacts at the state level about the leeway of transitioning our language. I think that's a really appropriate question to ask and see if we can push that forward. But right now it follows the federal language, which still uses students who are homeless. So we're putting it in that student first language, but it hasn't jumped the other way. So we'll certainly reach out to our contacts at the state and at the national level about any proposed changes coming forward.
And if I
Yeah,
can,
I was actually approached this morning. I felt a little attacked this morning why we were still using all that. So I said, I will bring it up.
Thank you.
So I have brought it up.
Thank you.
and if I can, we do have some new board members. Could you explain the intent and the requirements of McKinney-Vento?
The intent and requirements are really around removing barriers for students who are experiencing homelessness. And as Superintendent Vela said, that looks very different in very different situations. They may be staying with another family. They don't have regular, fixed, and adequate housing is the technical definition of that. So really, Lori Medeo's role and our building liaison's role is to look at how we can support all of those things that become barriers for students who are experiencing homelessness. One of the biggest things is as students move in to different locations, whether they are sheltered or moving in with other family and doubling up, providing transportation for them to make sure that they can stay in their current school so that they don't have to make more transitions to make sure that where we need to look at transcripts and partial credits because maybe they've moved mid-semester and they weren't able to finish the semester. In some ways, it may be helping them navigate, do they need clothes for school? Do they need shoes for school? So it's a range of services that can be provided through McKinney-Vento.
Can I ask a clarifying question? By changing our language to house or unhoused from homeless, would that affect funding and money at this time? Or would that just be cause confusion? I'm just kind of curious.
Because it all falls under the federal guidance and Title I requires as a part of the federal set aside for homeless students. So it's part of that consistent language. So I think we'd want to be really careful that we're making sure that we're aligned with that to follow the guidance, the federal guidance to do that. But I think we also can have some conversations in our own school and school community about what the appropriate language would be.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd also like to add, and then go back to President Clark's question about, in addition to removing obstacles or barriers, an example that was shared was when any other student who is not experiencing homelessness comes to a district to enroll and they don't have their immunization records, or maybe their file has been received or other, they may not potentially start school. That's not true in this case. So part of this law, McKinney, is to make sure we remove any of those barriers that may be there, because it's not their choice. The other one is, I think you heard Ms. Whitlock mention that transportation is also one that's important because there are many transitions that they may be experiencing. We want to limit the amount of transitions that they have. So that is why we also transport them to their school of origin, meaning if we're able to as a district, we transport them to wherever they started, where they know their teacher, where they know at least a few other friends potentially, but try to keep some consistency in there. So that's part of the law as well. And that is why we also pay some additional dollars for transportation in some cases. The other one over to Director Benno is we also have a consolidated program review that's done to some school, the Big Four, the largest district we used to be. They actually pull policy and make sure you have language in there that's aligned to federal language because we do use federal dollars to be able to support kids. So that's one reason we want to make sure we have that, but also talk about language that also is supportive of our community and school. So I hope that helps.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Can I ask a question quick? How do we identify unhoused kids?
That's a really good question, and that really goes back to not only is the building point of contact,
Right.
understanding what kinds of things that would say, gosh, I should ask some more questions, I need to refer this on to our McKinney-Vento coordinator. But Lori Medeo trains all of our data processors. She trains counselors each year. That's part of our requirements in terms of what are the things that you're listening for a family to say, what kinds of questions do you want to ask, and what kinds of questions do you not ask? And then referring that on to the counselor who then it's oftentimes the counselor, but referring it on to the building liaison to then find out, get more information. Again, sometimes it's the family comes with no records, they've, moved, hey, we are now staying with friends here. So there's some indicators when they enroll that they're looking for, and that's really where those conversations start, is school staff being aware of the look-fors.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Pam?
This shows the update on that policy, and the largest portion of this is changing the language of students experiencing homelessness from homeless students. That's a huge portion of it. We also have a procedure, they've been working on it, and if this moves forward, the procedure, I believe, is ready to go now as well. Any other questions on this policy? Okay, great. Next, we're at policy 5515. This is a new policy to KSD. It's workforce secondary traumatic stress. First reading. This came about from Substitute House Bill 1363, addressing secondary traumatic stress in the K through 12 workforce. They're also calling this compassion fatigue. The legislation acknowledges the significant toll secondary traumatic stress has on educators and subsequently students. We have many things in place right now, and the policy is coming to you as a brand-new policy. I'll put it up on the screen. There are no changes because it's new to us, but you can see the different things that are included in here. And a procedure will take care of a lot of the legislation pieces that were enacted. I'm sure you have questions on this one.
I have for Superintendent Bella. Can you explain to me the personnel and the process that goes with this?
Yes. We do have Ms. Nita McPherson here with, who has been kind of spearheading this with a team. But what I will share is that we currently have a number of things that we do. Example, employee assistance program. We also have a crisis response process we use depending on a crisis that's here. We have counselors in buildings that are part of that, by the way. We have, so on and on, we have different things happening throughout the district, where this one, based on the law, has us focusing our efforts toward, as you can see, the purpose on those staff that are taking care of those folks during those times, and how is the district coordinating their efforts to make sure that we are not only following the law, but also have a policy that this is the first one we've ever had, and we're hoping to get that, consensus tonight so that we can be working on the procedure for it. So in summary, we've been doing a number of things for supports, but not in a collaborative and in coordinated way to be able to suffice for this particular law and then this policy.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Because on this policy, and I don't know if this is law or if this is just the policy, where it says share information, share links, share whatever, how are we ensuring that we're doing this to make sure that we're in compliance with the law? Like, is there a newsletter, or is there something that's being sent with links to this information?
So I think that'll be part of that procedure piece, that I think those are great ideas, that the team that currently is working on this will be working on that type of communication. But I think that when you think about those other crises or other situations, that some of those we want to make sure that are available to our staff where it's confidential, for example. We also want access to this to be visible to them wherever they might be and whoever that staff may be. It could not be teachers, it could be other building staff that need to access this. I think that's still to come.
Okay.
And some of the work that so any suggestions, definitely we would take back to our team.
My other question then is working with labor partners. I know that with WA, there's some, because that's my labor group I'm with, they have some certain things. I know my brother-in-law is part of AFT, and they have a program where you can write wills and stuff like that. I know WA does it, so I'm a little jealous of that. But I'm like, are we going to collaborate with labor partners in order to get some of those shared resources so that the labor partners know about what's in their own unions as well?
Absolutely. What I'd like to have is Ms. McPherson come up and just talk about who is the group that has been working on this, but that's a great segue into Pearson.
Thank you.
Good evening. So just to let you know, when the House bill was released, I just want to celebrate the work that the Student Services Department did to really step up and address. They are already running, like Superintendent Valia talked about, the crisis response teams. There's a well-known need for support when individual traumatic incidents happen. But the House bill is really to also address what resources are available due to the constant secondary traumatic stress that staff members basically have when they're doing the best work they can to support, every day our students in and out. And it affects people differently. Also, different school environments have different amounts of need or different maybe levels of stress that may occur. Every situation and environment is unique and different. There are a lot of resources already out there by WEA, by AWSP for principals, whether those are self-assessment tools as well as support resources, guidance, informational flyers, PD sessions that are readily available. In fact, any of us could go to those websites and click on those ourselves and look at them. The state has already put out resources. Our work on the secondary portion of this is to really form that committee within KSD to collaborate on what specific resources we want to promote, we want to push out there. For instance, our SEB program benefits provides additional resources as well for employees. If they're SEB participants, those resources are readily available to them as well. So really the committee would be really a collaboration of different labor groups and non-represented staff to understand how they can access a self-assessment tool, what opportunities they have to provide feedback throughout the year on how they're feeling about their work environments and what supports they may need, as well as not only accessing that, of course, self-assessment tool, but then from there, what other resources do they have available to them, whether that's through SEB, EAP, within KSD, maybe teams or communities, or through different labor groups, other association tools that are available out there.
Do we have any employees on PEB, or is most of our employees on SEB?
That would
I'm
be
going to reference Jamie Fraser, who's
Yeah.
over our benefits team.
benefits type of question,
Yeah.
but I think you're getting to something, Dr. Clark, that I really like about this policy is if we think about the whole child and making sure we're
Taking care of
doing
this.
the social emotional learning needs as well as academics. And as I mentioned earlier, and we're thinking about those adults who take care of our kids, we also need to take care of our adults. And many of our adults in different parts of the organization have great ideas.
Yep.
Not only from labor groups, we have them in our communities where they may be able to provide supports. But I'll have Jamie answer hopefully the question on the benefits part.
Yeah, no
If not,
problem.
we can get back to you.
Good evening. We have some spouses that may have, or staff that may have spouses on PEB that then they would be covered under their policy. And we do have some retirees under PEB. But the Smart Health is the Washington State platform, and it covers all of Washington State employees, SEB, covered employees, PEB as well.
Okay, I was just curious because it calls out SEB, or the School Employees Benefits Board. I was wondering if PEB was on there, we need to add that too. But if we don't have any employees on that, then it wouldn't be
I
relevant.
don't believe so. I believe just employees that have spouses that are covered.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to add that sometimes it's just that there are maybe staff that have a resource that they may not know about. And this has now a team that, depending on the need, can now look at the whole staff or the whole person in terms of resources that they may need. So it's just a start, and we look forward to continuing the work of that, putting that procedure in place once this policy's in place.
Yeah.
That leads to my question. First of all, thank you for explaining all that, because that was going to be one part of my question. The second part of my question is, if we adopt this, how fast can we have all this in place? It sounds like we're working on it, but will it be up and running in a couple months, or is it tentatively kind of ready to go in some aspects now, the realistic rollout?
Well, I'll take the first stab at that, is that as Ms. McPherson mentioned, there are a number of things that have been, we're already providing with some supports. But what I hear your question, Director Amata, is in terms of in its totality, and then meeting the needs of this policy as a procedure, how fast can we get that going? Our teams have been meeting and working toward this even prior to the board moving forward with this policy. So I think we can get that pretty quick without giving a date, but I'll let Ms. McPherson talk about how often they've been meeting and what they already have planned to be able to move forward with, so.
Yeah. We've been working on a draft of the procedure to follow the adoption of the policy, and that's really a collaboration between our student services team and human resources. Part of that is really the language around creating the committee. You see this referenced in the policy. In any article you read about it, it really is a committee work, and so really talking about who should be on that committee, how broad we need to be. Is it labor group representatives? As long as we have some classified or some certificated, is that going to be satisfactory? Like, really, how broad or in-depth do we really want our committee to be? And then seeking out the participants for that committee. So, you know, reaching out to whether it's our labor groups or to an all KSD kind of survey to understand who would be willing or interested to participate and serve on that committee would really be some of that follow-up steps. But the draft of the procedure is already underway. It's the actual actionable steps that come from that procedure that are the bigger lift once we have that in place.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I just, I wanted to just have, you know, that's where it says secondary trauma stress, it lists the whole symptoms, right? Those are the known symptoms, and we're putting a policy that will need to be covering for future symptoms that can come up because this is secondary and we're just now in the cusp of figuring it out. So can we have a sentence that can cover any other symptoms that can arise in the future, so to speak? Does that make sense? Am I making sense what I'm saying?
I would probably need some clarification
Okay, so,
on
so
that.
for example, it says here, the board acknowledges that, you know, secondary traumatic stress, also called consumption figure, is naturally, but disruptive set of symptoms and symptoms secondary, and it says physical ailments, sleep disturbance, in addition to those affected secondary may experience. So an encompassing statement in there that kind of says, in case something else comes up, this policy will also cover.
Okay,
the language.
I'll speak to
Does
the
that make
WASDA
sense, Pam?
policy.
This is WASDA's model, but we could
Right.
put some type of catch-all phrase
Yeah.
for associated,
Something like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want it to be where, because policy is an umbrella, right? So we want to make sure it's as broad as possible. So in order to have that, I just don't want it to be only, oh, the policy doesn't cover this.
we could say, and other associated,
Yeah, something to that effect. Anyway, we could work.
symptoms. That's a-
Other associated.
Associated symptoms?
Right,
I agree with that.
right.
Okay,
And also, where it says policy statement, it says the district will promote a positive workplace climate that includes a focus on diversity, equity, I want to end that,
Okay,
and inclusion,
Yes, I agree with that too.
right? So that, because we want to make sure that,
okay. And
that's all I have.
sleep disturbances. Thank you.
Associated symptoms.
Is that more what you're looking for?
Yep, something, exactly. So therefore, in case something else comes up, that this policy will
We're
be able
covered.
to.
We're covered. Thank you, Anita.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Good, any other questions?
Just wanted to very quickly thank our team that really has been working on this for some time and collaborating. I think
Right.
you heard that word. We do some great things now, and like I mentioned earlier, this policy that the board now is in consensus to move forward can now, you know, just further enhance what we offer to all of our our community, school, or in our homes. So, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, ready to move on. The next is policy 1400. It is meeting conduct, order of business, and quorum. And if you give me just a second, I'll pull it up here. Okay, the main focus of this policy and the changes stem from House Bill 1329, open public meetings, various provisions. And it's mostly to do with public participation. And we, as KSD has been doing for years, we have had public comment. And this policy requires public comment, which we've been doing for years. The focus of this was that we have low-income people without transportation. We have elderly people who aren't able to make the trip. We have young families where bedtimes are early and they can't be at the board meeting. So this was our public comment way to have them be involved. It also talks about remote option, which we now, the board members can be remote. We can have a remote option for board members, for other participants, but we have to be here in the building to have a place where public can come unless, and there are two qualifications to that, there's an emergency where the board determines that it's not safe, and that needs to be documented if that's ever made a motion made for that to happen. It has to be documented, the reason why. And the second instance is if prior to March 2020, if you held remote meetings, you could still hold the entire meeting remote. But because we did not, that's not an option for us. So any district in the state that was doing it prior to March of 2020 could continue to do a fully remote meeting. But since we did not do that, that is not an option for us. The main thing is that it is scheduling meetings where the public's aware, and we'll go on to agenda, which talks about some other caveats for the agenda posting. But it talks about regular meetings when they are, and what the agenda needs to be posted. Sorry, give me just a second. The agenda needs to be posted at least 24 hours in advance, but we have ours posted the Friday night at midnight before the board meeting. Any questions on this one?
So if this gets adopted, our current policy about audience participation goes away, am I correct? Because that's kind of enveloped into this one?
No, I don't believe so.
Because I saw something about one of our things is going to be removed or retired. Where did I see that? 1430 maybe? I need to find where I saw that.
Let's see, let me take a look. Give me just a second here.
Oh, it's in
I
my
think it's
folder, right here, under 1400, at the very bottom one says
folded in,
1430
I
to be
believe.
retired.
Yeah.
So
We're-
is that the case?
Let's see, 1430, I
30 to be
believe we're
retired.
just going with WASDA. Give me just a second
Okay.
here. This is just folded into the 1400 policy.
Got it.
And that was a WASDA suggested change. And you can see Kelsey Winter's comment here that it's being moved to 1400. This language is being moved to 1400, meeting conduct, order of business, and quorum.
All right, I didn't see that comment on mine, so I'm glad that it's there, but yeah, that didn't show up on my 1431.
Yeah.
For the 1430 that's in your folder?
Yeah, it doesn't show that comment. Is there a way to, I mean, I don't know, I can ask later, but
No, ask, if you have a question about it.
I was just gonna, what, if there's a way to show that comment, because I don't
Yeah,
see,
are you able to see it up there on the side?
I see it on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
side, but it's
Yeah.
kind of small, but,
And this
there
will
any
be
way you can make that
addressed
bigger?
addressed in our procedure,
yeah.
1400 procedure. The specifics about audience participation will be in our procedure of 1400. Oh, where did she go?
There.
And Ms. Howley, I
Yes.
think I had a comment on there because where does it come up with, because I didn't see it in this procedure, the issue that we had at our board meeting. And when Ms. Zantello reads that there's only 3 minutes total is the concept of making public comments. And yet, I've, in the past, because I've been to board meetings for years, a person could comment on more than one issue, which might get into more than 3 minutes. Where is that showing up? Because it's not here. Is it under procedure?
It'll be under procedure.
And is that not a board decision instead of a staff decision?
Well, to be honest, staff has written the procedure, and we can, absolutely have the board look at it and make, comments on it. But it is a staff procedure.
Because there's a big misunderstanding from a few people that, and it happened at one of our board meetings, that a particular person wanted to make comment on one thing, and they also wanted to make a comment on a whole different issue, and they were going to be refused to speak, and we did allow them to speak, because I have been at board meetings. I can't specify in specifics where people could speak to more than one issue, which means it wasn't 1.5 and 1.5 minutes total.
So I would add to the board for consideration that this policy here we're working on, 1400, is the what? Meeting
Conduct.
happenings and when you have them in those pieces. And what Director Benno talked about in the comment really is in 1430, and then what Director Hamada you're mentioning is really the how in terms of participation of audience. And so going back to this policy, looking at those pieces, I don't think that the how piece is really addressed
And it's not in
anywhere
this,
here.
no.
It would be in 1430. And then in
So
addition.
is it in 1430 procedure or in 1430 policy?
It'll be in procedure of 1400 because 1430, on WASDA's suggestion, has been retired and folded into 1400.
So it's in procedure.
It'll be in procedure.
I figured out the problem. In the folder, it doesn't show the comment. You have to download it as a PDF, and then the PDF will show the comment. Just so you know, I figured that out. So I see it now. Appreciate it.
And the word, as I mentioned, the word document is the one that only shows the changes, so that's why I thought it maybe it only
Yep.
showed it there.
Always entertaining.
So I need to understand, and sorry I'm harping on this, but I know this is not in this policy, and we're writing policy, but where is the clarification? And who makes the decision on the time commitment for public comment? Because it is a board meeting, and I understand the reason for the staff to make the policy decisions, but I also think you need to incorporate that into, does the board, and I'm open for discussion, does the board want 3-minute total on different comments, or can they comment twice for 3 minutes? Where are we going to decide? Because that's not understood by our public.
So again, I'll share that that is a part of the procedure where I would take, those recommendations, considerations from the board and implement in procedure. Again, back to 1400 in this policy really is about the what and not the how.
Yeah. Again, but I still think if it's a board meeting, the board needs to weigh in on that heavily. When are we going to do that?
Leslie, but the point the superintendent is making is it's not in, the process is not here. The process is in
Procedure.
the other one.
Procedure.
Right, so will that be taken into consideration in the procedure then? Of this?
Yes.
Okay.
We good to move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
We're now on to 1420. This is currently entitled Agenda. Its new title will be Proposed Agenda and Consent Agenda to match WASDA's model policy. You can see the changes that were made. Kelsey Winters and Director Bennell, the comments out on the side here, and I don't know, does it show district language? That highlighted purple part is Kelsey Winters from WASDA.
Yeah, all that
noted
shows
that
up
it
for
was-
me. It just
yeah.
didn't show up for the 1430 one.
Yeah, sorry about
Cool.
that.
That's all cool, yeah, yeah.
So this is district language, so it's been added to WASDA's model policy. And when WASDA went through and updated some of ours, this is one they left and just made the notation about that. Now we have the other changes about copies of the proposed agenda. The minutes will be provided to each board member at least 72 hours in advance, and that's done by the agenda being posted. And everything else is 24 hours for public to get the information, although we post well ahead of that. We post everything midnight Friday night before the board meeting. We do talk about the amending of the agenda. We talk about the consent agenda that now appears on the regular agenda, no longer following the approval of minutes of the previous meeting. So it's just an arrangement on the agenda, but it's still on there. Any questions on this one?
I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember where it is. I don't know if it's our, what do we call it? Our board, I don't know what we call it, our board practice. I don't know where the document is, but is this the place where if board members want to add things or request things to be on the agenda, is that put here or is that another place? Because I don't see that necessarily in here, or is that something we need to add, or is that elsewhere? Because I get confused about
Yeah, I think,
where that is.
if I understand your question correctly, I was actually going through for the same one. The board, and I'm looking at our legal counsel, Mr. Brockvogel, at any time could add an agenda item based on this policy. I think that's what you were asking.
Correct.
But we would have to go through the, making that motion and adding it to the agenda anytime.
Exactly.
This is really about what's posted and how early in advance and that. So I think there's two things there. Is
Yeah.
what's posted. And then the other question I think you might have is our process that we have currently in place is the proposal for an agenda item, that board that is not policy, but it's part of our procedure or
Yeah,
process,
that's,
if you
well,
will,
yeah, it's our process.
which
yeah.
we've been using most recently. So I hope I answered
Yes,
those two
my,
things.
my question, because that was gonna be my question, because we have a time requirement, I know that at any meeting we can bring something up, but we can't make a decision about it because it wasn't posted on time, right? And so this focuses on when we have agendas, we have to post it legally a specific amount of time. So we as boards, through Robert's rules, can add things to the agenda, but we just can't make decisions on anything we can discuss because of law and policy about how decisions are made and when we post those topics to be
I'm gonna
discussed.
I'll
ask,
have, legal counsel, Mr. Brockvogel, come up and make sure that we are on the,
That's my assumption, but yes, that'd be great.
we'll make sure.
Thank you, Superintendent Villa, and, Your Honor. Yeah, this really gets at a couple things that we've experienced this last year. One, we recall we had some contracts that the board needed to bless, and they were maybe 2 hours outside this 3-day window or something very close. And then we went through this process where you suspended the rules that are self-imposed. It was sort of clunky at that time. So this allows you to consider things. This makes it very clear that you can suspend your 72-hour notice and still move ahead with blessing contracts and taking final action. We thought was important for the public to know that this rule or this policy does not interfere with that. Separate 1320 is the policy. The 24-hour notice is required for special meetings, and that you can only take action on what is in the 24-hour notice for special meetings. For regular meetings, this policy clarifies that you can amend your regular meeting agenda. You can bring in supplemental material. If you have something that you weren't able to get on the agenda for whatever reason, you can make a motion to amend the agenda, and the board can consider that. You can present material. Even if it's within the 72 hours, you can still do that. So it just codifies our sort of flexibility that we have. It
I
makes it
think
clearer.
Director Bennett, he explained, Mr. Brockvogel explained it better than I, but I think we do have the flexibility as a board to do those PCC just chaired.
Makes sense to me. So thank you for that clarification. That really
Well,
helps.
thank you for bringing that up.
Oh,
We are 5 for 5 so far. We are on the
Wow.
last one, I know. The
Wow.
last one is policy 5271, which is our current 5241, reporting improper governmental action, which is also called whistleblower protection. Give me just a second here. Very few changes to this. We've just brought it in line with WASDA's title and numbering system. We've changed our number to match WASDA's. Many of the things that were in here are in procedure now, always were in procedure. And as Kelsey Winters noted, the definitions in the RCW and also stated in procedure. I don't believe at this point, we need to talk to HR, but the procedure will be looked at to see if it's going to be updated. But other than that, we call out that no retaliatory action will be taken if the employee in good faith alleged improper governmental action in accordance with policy and procedure. They have to follow the guidelines, but no retaliatory action will be taken as long as this is done. Questions?
This is just standard. Yeah,
Standard update.
yeah.
And I believe Mr. Brockvogel matches all state requirements for whistleblower protection.
Sorry, Mr. Brockvogel, would you please come just state that for the record?
Thank you. As I understand, the question was whether this proposed policy is compliance with the state law, and it is. It reflects and sort of replicates what the standard is. One does not receive whistleblower protection without complying with the requirements of the statute and this policy.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Anybody?
Okay.
Leslie? Okay, it's quiet.
Megan?
Sorry. No more questions.
Give me just one second here. That is 6 policies that will be moving forward.
Wow.
Yeah. They'll appear on the January 25th regular meeting agenda. The next policy work session is February 1st. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
It's like barely 6 o'clock. It's just not even 6, and we got through 6
We were on-
I want to take
policies.
just a point of,
I don't just,
point of privilege
Thank
just
you.
to
Wayne
thank,
is like, don't mention.
to thank President Clark and our board for the pre-work that they've done. As you can see, it really makes a difference when we get to this point, and, you know, we really want to hear from you and hear the questions and things that you have in our community, and so good work today. So I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you, board members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
And if there's no other business to be brought before this board, this meeting at 5:59 is adjourned.